The year was 1906, and in the quiet town of Greenville, Delaware, a boy named James Harrison Wilson Thompson was born into a family of influence. His father, a wealthy textile manufacturer, expected his son to follow the traditional path of business and industry. But Jim was different. Restless and ambitious, he sought adventure beyond the expectations placed upon him. From an early age, Thompson exhibited a keen interest in design and structure. He pursued architecture at Princeton University, and his career seemed set. But the world had other plans. The tides of history were shifting, and as war loomed over Europe, Thompson found himself drawn toward something far more thrilling: espionage. When World War II erupted, Jim Thompson abandoned the quiet stability of architecture and enlisted in the U.S. Army. His sharp intellect and adaptability soon earned him a position in the newly formed Office of Strategic Services, OSS, the precursor to the CIA. He was sent to Asia, operating in the shadowy world of intelligence and covert operations. He maneuvered through war-torn regions, gathering intelligence, negotiating with resistance fighters, and playing a pivotal role in the war effort. But war changes men. When the guns fell silent and the world celebrated peace, Jim Thompson found himself unable to return to the monotony of a civilian life. The thrill of secrecy and discovery still called to him. And so, instead of returning home, he chose an unknown future in a land that had captivated him during his wartime service, Thailand. At first, it seemed an odd choice. An American intelligence officer, abandoning his home country to settle in a foreign land? But Thompson saw something in Thailand that others didn't, a world of untapped beauty and culture, teetering on the edge of modernity. He immersed himself in its traditions, befriended its people, and in doing so, he stumbled upon something extraordinary: Thai silk. The silk industry in Thailand was on the brink of extinction. The delicate art of silk weaving, passed down through generations, was fading in the wake of industrialization. But Thompson had a vision. He saw not just a fabric, but a forgotten treasure waiting to be rediscovered. With his natural charisma and eye for opportunity, he set out to revolutionize Thai silk, bridging the gap between tradition and international demand. His efforts would soon make him famous, but fame comes with shadows. And while Thompson's business flourished, forces unseen were beginning to turn against him. For now, he was unaware. He built a grand home in Bangkok, surrounded by the finest examples of Thai art and culture. He hosted lavish parties, mingled with diplomats, celebrities, and spies alike. He was living the dream, hailed as a visionary, a man who had single-handedly revived an industry. But the past is never truly buried. And Jim Thompson's past, the secrets he carried, the enemies he made, was beginning to close in on him. Something was coming. Something that would take the world's most famous silk merchant and erase him forever. By the mid-1960s, Jim Thompson had become more than just a businessman. He was a legend. His silk empire stretched across the world, dressing royalty, movie stars, and the elite in vibrant Thai silk. Hollywood adored him. Diplomats sought his company. His home in Bangkok, an architectural masterpiece filled with rare antiques and ancient artifacts, became a hotspot for the rich and powerful. Yet beneath the surface, something was shifting. Thompson was restless. The energy that once drove him to build an empire now seemed to stir something else inside him, a need to disappear, to escape. Those closest to him noticed his demeanor changing. He became more secretive, his once boisterous charm now clouded by deep contemplation. Was it exhaustion? Regret? Or was there something, or someone, chasing him? There were whispers. Some said he had been involved in espionage long after the war had ended, that he still had ties to intelligence agencies, that he knew too much. Others believed he had angered the wrong people, powerful figures in Thailand or foreign governments. A few suggested that his wealth and landholdings had made him enemies who wanted him gone. And then, in March of 1967, he left Bangkok for what would become his final journey. His destination? The Cameron Highlands, Malaysia. A tranquil retreat high in the mountains, known for its cool climate and rolling tea plantations. It was a place of rest, of stillness, an escape from the intensity of Bangkok. Thompson traveled with a close-knit group: Ling Tien Gee, a well-known Singaporean chemist, and his wife, Helen. Along with them was one of his dearest friends, Constance Connie Mangskau, a prominent Thai socialite who had shared in many of his adventures. They arrived at a secluded cottage known as Moonlight Bungalow. It was an elegant, colonial-era retreat, nestled amidst thick jungle and mist-covered hills. The group settled in, enjoying the fresh mountain air, long walks, and leisurely conversations. But something about Jim Thompson was different. He was unusually quiet, his eyes scanning the distance, as if expecting someone, or something, to appear. At night, he lingered on the bungalow's veranda, staring into the darkness beyond the tree line. Connie later recalled that he seemed distracted, as if he was waiting for a message that never came. Then came Easter Sunday, March 26, 1967. The morning passed peacefully. The group attended an Easter service at a nearby church, sharing a quiet meal afterward. There was laughter, stories, and the kind of light-heartedness that comes with good company. But then, around 1:30 p.m., Jim Thompson stood up from the table. "I think I'll take a walk," he said casually. No one thought much of it. He was known for his long walks, often wandering for hours, lost in thought. But this walk would be different. He stepped out onto the winding path that led into the dense jungle. The sound of birds echoed in the trees. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth. The sun, hidden behind shifting clouds, cast eerie shadows along the trail. And then he vanished. Hours passed. The group assumed he would return before sunset. But as the sky darkened and the cool mountain breeze swept through the bungalow, Jim Thompson was nowhere to be seen. By nightfall, panic set in. They called his name into the night. Flashlights flickered through the trees. The jungle was vast, silent, and unforgiving. By morning, the realization struck like a hammer. Jim Thompson was gone. No footprints, no torn clothing, no signs of struggle. Nothing. It was as if the Silk King had stepped into the jungle and simply ceased to exist. The morning of March 27, 1967, dawned with a sense of dread at the Moonlight Bungalow. Jim Thompson had been missing for over 18 hours. His friends, initially hoping he had merely lost track of time, were now gripped by an unsettling realization. Something was terribly wrong. The Cameron Highlands, while a peaceful retreat, was surrounded by thick, inhospitable jungle. The terrain was steep, with hidden ravines, wild animals, and dense foliage that could easily swallow a man whole. But Jim Thompson was not an ordinary traveler. He was a former intelligence officer, a man who had navigated far more dangerous landscapes during the war. Getting lost seemed unlikely. As the sun climbed, panic turned into action. The bungalow's staff was alerted, and locals were asked if they had seen the American businessman wandering the trails. No one had. By midday, Malaysian authorities had been notified. What began as a local search effort quickly expanded into one of the largest manhunts in Southeast Asian history. The search effort. Within hours, hundreds of personnel had been mobilized. The operation included 500-plus searchers, Malaysian police, army personnel, local trackers, and volunteers scoured the jungle. Helicopters and planes, the Royal Malaysian Air Force conducted aerial sweeps. Trained dogs, bloodhounds were brought in to pick up any scent. Indigenous tribes, the local Orang Asli, Expert trackers familiar with the terrain joined the search. But as the days passed, the search revealed nothing. There were no footprints, no disturbed vegetation, no clothing, no sign of a struggle. It was as if Thompson had simply walked into the jungle and disappeared into thin air. As the search continued, so did theories. The first theories emerge. With no evidence of foul play or an accident, speculation began to grow. What had really happened to Jim Thompson? Lost in the jungle? Some believed he had simply wandered too far and succumbed to exhaustion or injury. But no remains were ever found. Not even a single piece of clothing. Animal attack? The Cameron Highlands were home to tigers, leopards, and wild boars. Could a predator have taken him? Yet, no blood, no disturbed ground, no signs of struggle were discovered. Foul play. Some whispered that Thompson had powerful enemies, both in business and in intelligence circles. Had he been kidnapped or assassinated? If so, why was there no ransom demand? Did he disappear on purpose? Could Jim Thompson, once a master of secrecy, have staged his own vanishing act? If so, why? And where did he go? As days turned into weeks, frustration mounted. Malaysian authorities, American diplomats, and even Thompson's family were desperate for answers. But the jungle remained silent. Jim Thompson, the legendary Silk King, was now at the center of one of the most baffling mysteries of the 20th century. And then, just as hope was beginning to fade, strange new clues emerged. Hints that suggested Jim Thompson's disappearance was far more than just an accident. Days turned into weeks, and the search for Jim Thompson showed no signs of progress. The Cameron Highlands jungle, vast and unyielding, seemed determined to keep its secrets buried. No footprints, no clothing, no remains, nothing. But then, the whispers began. Local villagers reported strange sightings. Some claimed to have seen a tall, foreign man walking near isolated trails after the official disappearance date. Others spoke of unmarked helicopters seen flying over the jungle at night. There were even rumors that men in suits, agents perhaps, had been quietly asking questions about Thompson's past. The official story was that Jim Thompson had walked into the jungle and vanished. But those who had known him, his friends, his business partners, and even his enemies, began to doubt that version of events. To the world, Jim Thompson was simply a businessman. But to those who dug deeper, he was something more. Before the Silk Empire, before Thailand, he had been a U.S. intelligence officer. He had worked for the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, a shadowy organization that would later evolve into the CIA. He had spent years infiltrating foreign territories, gathering intelligence, and operating behind enemy lines. Had his past come back to haunt him? In the weeks leading up to his disappearance, Thompson had exhibited strange behavior. He had grown more secretive. He spoke cryptically about being watched. He had hinted at something big, something he had discovered, but never shared. Could it be that Jim Thompson's disappearance wasn't accidental at all? Could it have been planned by forces more powerful than anyone realized? As the investigation continued, new leads were suppressed, evidence vanished, and officials who had been vocal about finding Thompson suddenly fell silent. Among the theories that surfaced, some suggested he was kidnapped by a foreign intelligence agency. If Thompson had access to sensitive information from his OSS days, could he have been abducted to keep certain secrets buried? The Cold War was raging. Could he have been a target of espionage? He had been eliminated by enemies in Thailand. The Thai silk industry was booming because of him. Had he angered powerful figures who wanted him out of the picture? There were rumors that he had been involved in Thai politics, perhaps too involved. He had discovered something he shouldn't have. Some speculated that, during his business travels, he had uncovered something dangerous, something worth killing for. A secret military base? A government scandal? A hidden wartime conspiracy? The more people searched for the Silk King, the more questions surfaced. And the more the world realized that his disappearance was anything but ordinary. Then, something unsettling happened. One of Jim Thompson's closest friends, a Thai woman named Constance Connie Mangskow, who had accompanied him on his last trip, started receiving mysterious phone calls. When she answered, there was silence. Then, the line would go dead. A warning? Had she seen something she wasn't supposed to see? Someone, somewhere, knew what had really happened to Jim Thompson. But they weren't talking. The jungle had swallowed the Silk King, and the world would never see him again. The world was watching. As weeks turned to months, Jim Thompson's disappearance became more than just a missing persons case. It became a global enigma. The press speculated wildly, intelligence agencies whispered behind closed doors, and those closest to him began to fear the worst. But then, something chilling happened. Long after the search had been called off, stories began to emerge. A plantation worker in the Cameron Highlands claimed he had seen a tall foreign man, disoriented, walking alone in the jungle, days after Thompson had disappeared. A local villager swore he had seen a white man with a beard, dressed in rags, moving near a river deep in the forest. A Buddhist monk in a remote Malaysian temple reported that a confused foreigner had come seeking shelter, speaking in broken Thai and English, before disappearing once more. Were these just ghost stories? Or had Thompson somehow survived, trapped in the jungle, unable to find his way back? Yet, despite these reports, not a single piece of physical evidence, no bones, no clothing, no personal belongings, was ever found. How could a man simply vanish without a trace? Back in Bangkok, Constance Connie Mangskow, one of Thompson's closest friends and the last person to see him, began experiencing unsettling incidents. Strange men loitered outside her house, watching. Her phone rang at odd hours, with only silence on the other end. One night, she came home to find her apartment had been ransacked, but nothing was taken. It was clear. Someone wanted her to stop asking questions. Was it possible that Jim Thompson had discovered something dangerous before his disappearance? Had he been silenced, not by nature, but by human hands? As the years passed, the theories surrounding Jim Thompson's fate only grew darker. A political assassination? Some believed Thompson had been killed by an intelligence agency, either American or foreign. Had he stumbled onto a secret, a covert operation, a political scandal that made him a target? Was his past in U.S. intelligence catching up to him? Betrayed by someone close? Could someone he trusted have led him into a trap? Had he been lured into the jungle under false pretenses, only to be eliminated? A chosen disappearance? Some whispered that Thompson had staged his own vanishing act, escaping into the shadows for reasons unknown. Had he planned his disappearance, to live out the rest of his days in secrecy? But if so, why? And where? The final clue. Years after his disappearance, an unsettling detail emerged. While cleaning out Jim Thompson's home in Bangkok, workers discovered a single, mysterious note, wedged inside an old book in his library. It was a cryptic message, written in his handwriting. "They are watching. I need to leave soon." Who was watching? And had he left? Or had he been taken? The truth remained buried in the shadows. Jim Thompson had become a ghost in the jungle, and the world would never know if he had vanished by choice or by force. Years passed, but the legend of Jim Thompson never faded. The jungle had swallowed him whole, leaving behind only questions that refused to die. His disappearance was not just a mystery. It had become a modern myth. Writers, investigators, and conspiracy theorists dissected every detail, yet no one could answer the ultimate question: what really happened to the Silk King? The investigation goes cold. Despite the exhaustive search, despite the whispered theories, the official story remained the same. Jim Thompson walked into the jungle and was never seen again. But some people refused to believe it. His family, his business partners, even former intelligence contacts, they all sensed something deeper. How could a man so well-trained, so physically fit, simply vanish without a trace? Why was there no sign of an accident, an animal attack, or a body? Why did powerful people, government officials, intelligence operatives, seem so eager to let the case fade away? Then, in the 1980s, a new lead surfaced: the man in Cambodia. A journalist investigating war crimes in Cambodia claimed to have met a former Khmer Rouge prison guard, a man who had seen an American prisoner in the 1970s who matched Jim Thompson's description. The prisoner had been old, thin, but still sharp. He spoke Thai and English. He had whispered to the guard, "Tell them I'm still alive." Could it have been him? If so, how had he ended up in Cambodia? Had he been kidnapped and smuggled across borders? Had he known too much about the war, about intelligence secrets, making him a liability to someone, somewhere? Or was this just another ghost story in a case filled with phantoms and half-truths? The final theory. There was one last theory, one that sent chills through those who heard it. Some believed that Jim Thompson had been planning to leave Thailand before he vanished, that he had learned something, seen something, or been given a warning. What if his trip to Cameron Highlands wasn't just a vacation? What if it was an escape plan gone wrong? Had someone caught up with him before he could disappear on his own terms? The Silk King's house remains empty. Today, Jim Thompson's house in Bangkok still stands. It has been turned into a museum, frozen in time, a monument to the man who built an empire and then vanished. Visitors walk through the grand rooms, admiring the ancient Thai art, the silk-draped walls, the air of mystery that lingers in every corner. But in the silence of that house, in the empty halls where Jim Thompson once stood, the question remains: did he die in the jungle? Was he taken? Or did he slip away into the night, leaving behind only a mystery that will never be solved? No one knows, and perhaps no one ever will. The Silk King is gone, but his story will never disappear.